luckily, we're coming back from tea to a talk that I'm thoroughly looking forward to. Keith Betton needs absolutely no introduction from me to any of you. As you know, he's been part of ABC and a leading light of it now for many years, becoming vice chairman in 2000 and subsequently chairman from 2008 till 2015 when I took over. And he's now one of the club's vice presidents. He's also been a trustee of RSPB and BTO, and is also vice president of that. As you know, Keith spent his working life in the travel industry, and he seems to be single-handedly supporting it in his retirement to amass a bird list which shows 75%, I gather, of the world's species. Now, I'm strongly suspecting that the other 25% will be notched up soon. But not in the next half hour, because he's going to talk to us about birds of São Tomé and Príncipe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's nice to have a good welcome like that. I gave a talk recently where the chairman said, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have Keith Betton giving a talk about whatever it was I was talking about. And next month we've got a really good speaker." So, thank you for sparing me that one. So I know a few of you in the audience have been to São Tomé and Príncipe. Let's have a quick show of hands. There's a few, not many, it's about 5 or 6. Excellent. That's really good, because it means all of you now can book on our tour in 2018, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. They are beautiful islands, and they have amazing and unique flora and fauna. The bird list is not huge, about 72 or so breeding residents, but 29 of the species that are found there are found nowhere else in the world. And 12 of those are in fact so rare that they are of global conservation concern. There are 3 critically endangered species on São Tomé. That's São Tomé fiscal, São Tomé grosbeak, and the dwarf olive ibis. They're all found in the lowland forests. And then on Príncipe, there's another critically endangered species, recently split actually from the Gulf of Guinea thrush, and that's the Príncipe thrush. So these forests have actually been classified as the second most important forests for bird conservation in Africa, and it's not least because of the high level of endemism there. So let's see. That was the end of the talk. Interesting. There, okay. There's that's where they are. They are off the west or off the central coast of Africa, just off Gabon. You can see the line of islands there. São Tomé and Príncipe, they're quite different in size, and they're also quite different when you get there to see them. There's São Tomé with the highland in the top there. It's actually quite a high area with a very, very impressive peak, which you'll see a bit later. So to go to a destination like this, you want to use good resources. The BOU and BOC published a checklist, which you can see on the left, by Peter Jones and Alan Tighe. Tasso Leventis was responsible for producing a small book full of very good photographs. And then some people who you may know, Patrice Christie from Gabon, and he produced the book on the right. I went there with BirdQuest, the tour operator. I went there last August, spent a week there at the end of a 2-week trip to Gabon. And Pete Morris was the leader of the trip, and almost all the photographs you're going to see today were taken on that trip, either by myself or Pete, but mainly by Pete, I have to say. Here are the birds that have been said to be endemic to the islands. The figure of 29, well, it could be 25, it could be 26, it does depend which list you use. I've just listed here all the ones that have at some point been split. As you can see, almost all the ones in São Tomé start with the name São Tomé, and almost all the ones on Príncipe start with the word Príncipe. But it is a bit confusing because some that are found on both islands start with the name Príncipe or indeed São Tomé. So it is complicated. But those are the endemics, and we only missed one of them. So if you go on the trip in 2018, you might even get them all. So many thanks to the people who helped me with this. As I said, Pete Morris took a lot of the photographs, but also Nick Borrow in particular, who's been to the islands more than anybody else, I think, from the birding community. So going to Sao Tome, here we are, we've landed, we've arrived, this is just outside our hotel. We stay at the very luxurious O'Malley Lodge Hotel, so there's no kind of hanging around in sort of log cabins with beetles coming in to join you in bed. This is all very, very luxurious. You know, it is actually a holiday destination, very popular with the Portuguese people. And in the garden, I actually, between arriving and going for the welcome drink, managed to find 4 species that were endemic, that were actually new for me. So the Sao Tome prinia, a typical kind of prinia, really very common in a wide range of habitats, only rare actually in areas that are really nicely wooded. So scarce in undisturbed forests, but very common in gardens. Newton sunbird, a very tiny little sunbird. This is the male. In all of the gardens, goes up to 1,800 meters in altitude, and suffers quite a bit actually from the African emerald cuckoo, which parasitizes it. And the Sao Tome spirops, which likes the sort of shady understory of tall, humid forests, but it's widespread, and it's mainly above 900 meters, and you can have little flocks of these around you in many places, quite often up to 25 at a time. And the Sao Tome spinetail, despite its name, actually found on both of the islands, and a very common bird. Found in the forests where it nests, it goes into also areas of cultivation, up to 1,500 meters in fact, so quite high up. And it's a solitary nester, it nests on hollow, mossy trees. So we've arrived, we've had our welcome drink, we've done a bit of local birding. We head up into some of the mountains nearby. This is actually Lagoa Amelia, which is a lake surrounded by large amounts of forest. It's easy to get to, and it's a fairly straightforward, easy trail, a little bit slippery though, on the way up. The best bird, frankly, of that walk was this, the Sao Tome Scops owl, which was just sitting there, and we managed to get some fantastic photographs of it, a vulnerable species, although I think possibly commoner than people have thought in the past. May well be in competition with barn owls, and it may well be predated by cats, we're not quite sure. There are 2 forms. This is the rufous form. The grey form is hardly ever seen. It goes up to 1,300 meters in the forests. And we camped overnight once, and we could hear them all around us. So I don't think it's rare, but it is vulnerable because it's only found in this one place. Incidentally, there are rumours of a Scots owl on Principe, but it's never really been proved, and that's something maybe for the future. Perhaps somebody will work that one out. So the giant sunbird, also called the Sao Tome sunbird, rare to locally common, but believed to be stable in numbers. It's a big bird. The male actually has a length of up to 23 centimeters. That tail really is quite long. And this goes to, it's mainly in the primary forest, but also will go out to disturbed habitats, maybe a kilometre or so away from where it's mainly living. It goes up to 2,000 metres, very high indeed. So the Sao Tome green pigeon, very much like African green pigeon, I think, just a sort of dull-coloured version of it. Incidentally, African green pigeon is found on Principe, but this bird here is only found on Sao Tome. Found in the primary forest, but also in secondary forests, up to about 1,600 metres. But sadly, it's the most commonly shot pigeon, and it's an issue, but there is a lot of shooting of pigeons by the local population, and that is causing trouble, and it may well be causing quite a rapid decline in the population of this bird, which, as you can see, is listed as vulnerable. The Sao Tome oriole, also vulnerable. This is like a washed-out version of the sort of mainland orioles that we're used to seeing in West Africa, but it's got a much more robust bill. Also found in primary forest, up to about 1,600 metres, and it's generally absent from anywhere like plantations where people are living, or coffee or cocoa plantations. The Sao Tome paradise flycatcher, this is the male, and this is the female. Again, primary and secondary forest for this one, up to about 1,600 metres. Actually common, there's probably something like 125 per square kilometre from recent survey work that's been done there. But there have been times when it's not been common at all, and in the 1970s it went through a decline. No one is actually sure why it's possible that it could be the use of pesticides in the plantations which caused that. But these pesticides are no longer used. The Sao Tome thrush. So formerly there was the Gulf of Guinea thrush up until 2013, which was divided into two. Take a good look at this one. This is quite common, the Sao Tome thrush. It's found in towns and farms and most kinds of forests right up to 2,000 metres. The beak you can see is quite dark, and although it is scaly on the front, remember what it looks like because I'm going to show you Principe thrush a little bit later on. So that's an easy one to see. And also easy is the Sao Tome weaver, common in almost every kind of forest and plantations. It likes disturbed habitats. But it's not going to be found in grassland. You do need trees. Parasitised by the African emerald cuckoo again, 20% of nests, incidentally, apparently have one of the cuckoo eggs. It behaves very much like a nuthatch, running up and down boughs of trees, looking in behind the bark. When I first saw it, I thought, my goodness, this is a nuthatch, but it wasn't. Quite an unusual bird. Nothing like a weaver that I've seen before. So this is the Principe seed eater. So despite its name, it's actually common on Sao Tome and actually quite rare on Principe. Found in most forest types, up to about 1,500 metres. The two islands have different races, and one is slightly darker than the other. And the Sao Tome white-eye. Now this is a bird that sometimes is described as the Principe white-eye. And I think, going back, people did believe there were two, and now I believe they think there's just one with two races. But the thing about taxonomy, there's no such thing as the last word, so you never know. Try and see it, because it might actually get split. But anyway, Sao Tome white-eye, uncommon actually on Sao Tome. We only saw it 3 times, and we actually missed it completely on Principe. It's declining on both islands, and I think maybe there's something going on that's causing the fluctuation in the population. So we're off to Principe now. So it's a much smaller island. This is an island that's only about 6 kilometres wide and it's something like 18 kilometres long. Not a big island at all. You can sail around it quite quickly. It takes 20 minutes to fly there. And as we fly across to Principe, we actually flew over this island. This is Bonbon Island, where I actually went to stay. And this is a fantastic resort, really luxurious. I mean, you feel like you're going into a Bond film doing this. Perhaps not going in on the runway, but anyway, the runway is being extended at the moment. Let's hope that doesn't result in too many tourists coming, but it is being done to get more people in there and to give more of an eco-tourism opportunity for the people. This is the resort where we stayed. This is actually the walk to dinner. I remember this particularly with great fondness. And that's the kind of really awful accommodation that you have to stay in. It's a terrible place. Wonderful. Actually quite hard to force myself to go out birding. And I was lying on my bed and someone came out and said, come and have a look down here. And went up the track and immediately got into some fantastic forest. The entrance track to the hotel has all of the endemics on it, bar one, that you find. So, I mean, you don't have to go very far. Dawn's thrush babbler, all around the hotel. This used to be called Principe flycatcher babbler, and it is common. It's a most unusual endemic. I don't think people really know what it is. It's been considered to be a thrush, it's been considered to be an old world warbler, and in recent years, it's an old world flycatcher. Anyway, HBW puts it in with all the babblers. And I think probably, again, we haven't heard the last word on that. Some of you may have an opinion on it. Found in all kinds of woodland and all elevations, and noisy and common. The Principe sunbird, common, again, in the garden, right outside my hotel window. Likes all kinds of woodlands and cultivation, but it's mainly in the lower areas. Principe is a much lower island than Sao Tome, so found up to about 150 metres. And this is the Principe weaver, also known as Principe golden weaver, very common, likes well-timbered areas, and you get small colonies like this with the male hanging upside down, displaying vigorously beneath the nest. This is the blue-breasted kingfisher, which of course many of you will have seen in West Africa. It's a common bird here, but I think we're not quite sure whether that is actually going to be split or not. It's the only, there are 4 races of blue-breasted kingfisher. This is the only one to live on islands. So I think it's a possible split for the future. It's 10% bigger than the other races that are found in West Africa and has a paler plumage and, as you can probably see, a rather larger bill as well. And another one that may be split in the future, Principe drongo. We saw several of these. I'm not entirely sure what it's to be split from, but HBW takes the view that it's actually a race of velvet-mantled drongo. But it's a long way from the mainland, so maybe that will be split in the future. So this one was originally called Principe kingfisher, and indeed in Handbook of Birds of the World it still is called that. But most authorities now treat this as a race of the malachite kingfisher, but it's in the past also been thought to be white-bellied kingfisher. As you can see, it has got quite a pale belly, it's got a paler crest, and it's quite distinctly banded. The thing that I find fascinating about it is it doesn't go anywhere near water. This is a bird that spends almost all its time in dry habitats, as most kingfishers do around the world. It's nothing, it doesn't behave anything like a malachite kingfisher. As you can see, I would like it to be split. But, the Principe glossy starling, often found in mixed flocks with a splendid glossy starling. It tends to be higher up in the trees. It's got different vocalizations, and as you can see, it's got some oily green colours on it, which help you to tell it apart. Found in forest and plantations, and it's in the low and medium altitudes. Another bird that's pretty common is the Principe spirox, found mainly in primary forests, but you know it's in many other habitats too. It's a lot less common than say 40 years ago, but you know you'll get flocks of maybe 15 or so flying around you whenever you're out wandering around by the hotel driveway and so on. So we actually walked from my room. I think we saw all the endemics within 200 metres of my bedroom. So that was actually the kind of birding I really liked. Very much enjoyed that. The next day on Principe, we were out on a boat and we ventured further afield. And this is the impressive mountain of Pico Mesa. And I was thinking, I'm not sure whether we're going to be made to climb this because, of course, this is BirdQuest, where sometimes you probably just climb it anyway because it's there. But pleased to say we didn't. It's an impressive piece of rock. We were going to look in the forests all around it, and we were going to look specifically in this kind of forest. Quite slippery, not steep, but just slippery, and you know, you want maybe a walking pole with you if you're going there. But this is the bird we wanted to see. Very few people have seen this. It was split, as I say, in 2013. It's the Principe thrush. Critically endangered. And as you may remember, the other thrush, I mentioned that had a dark beak, not particularly scaly on the breast. As you can see, this one, very yellow beak, yellow legs as well, and the breast is very much scalloped. It's smaller than the Santa-May thrush as well. Now, it was thought to be extinct, but it was rediscovered in 1997. A survey in 2007 suggested there's probably only 250 or so mature individuals, or perhaps less than that. I don't know. I have nothing to go on. I only saw the one, but I did find it relatively easily when we were there. So we then flew back to Santa-May, and very colourful image, rather disappointing though, but I mean, you know, the area of Santa-May that you want to have protected is in the south, and this is just driving around in the countryside generally. Looking at some fairly disturbed ground, but plenty of birds there, and actually most of the endemics of Santa-May, other than the rare ones, are very happy to exist, it seems, in this sort of habitat. White-tailed tropic bird, of course, a widespread bird around the world. I just put this in because the ones here, actually, being the Atlantic ones, they have a slightly yellowish tail, which I hadn't noticed before. Some white-tailed tropic birds are actually yellow or golden in colour, but this one has a yellow tail, and it flies above the forest and is widespread and easy to see. And this is the giant weaver, a huge weaver, 22 centimetres long, living in the natural forest but also in plantations, but seldom in the savanna areas. This particular bird flew towards us carrying nesting material. It was building its nest. They nest solitary, and we found the nest as well. And there is the male looking rather glorious. The island bronze-naped pigeon, formerly called Sao Tome bronze-naped pigeon, a near-threatened species. Now we saw this on both Principe and Sao Tome, but we saw it better in Sao Tome. It's suffering badly from heavy hunting pressure. It's a shy bird, and it's normally in the tops of the trees, but it is suffering from the pressure, I'm afraid, of the hunting locally. There are some introduced species. This one you may have seen if you've been in, for example, Western Angola. This is the golden-backed bishop, introduced here, and Sao Tome likes tall razor grass and rank vegetation, and it's found up to about 300 metres. And another introduced bird from West Africa and Central Africa is the red-headed lovebird. Really quite common. We saw them many times. So here's the other kingfisher, which is, as I say, now considered to be part of malachite kingfisher, formerly called Sao Tome kingfisher. We didn't see very many of them, but this is much more a bird of small streams and rivers, and it's got very different plumage to malachite kingfisher. I won't go into the details, but I mean, it's got much shorter brown feathers, and it is pretty big too, much bigger. And the immature plumage, or juvenile plumage, is very different from malachite kingfisher. So, as you can see, I'm hoping somebody might take notice of that and split it. Sao Tome olive pigeon, endangered. Another one, I'm afraid, that's suffering from hunting. We just saw it once, and we just saw 3 birds. So it's really quite a rare bird. It's really found in the primary rainforest. It goes right the way up to well over, well, just over 2,000 metres. And it's gone through a real decline. It's the rarest of the pigeons in Sao Tome. It does need strict protection. So if you're going to go to Sao Tome and you want to see those 3 critically endangered species that I mentioned at the beginning, you've got to go here. Obo National Park, or Parc Natural. This is the place to go. And the place you're going to see now is Pico de Sao Tome, which I showed you on the very opening slide, so just over 2,000 metres high. You don't have to climb that. That's the first bit of good news. The other bit of good news is, although you can see all around there oil palms everywhere, it's not all oil palms. There's some very good habitat left. We camped for one night, and that's what would happen on the ABC tour. You have to camp for a night, you climb up. It's not a particularly difficult climb to get to this point. The camping is not particularly awful either, as long as it's not raining. But there is a fairly steep walk, which you'd need, say, walking poles for, and just take it easy to get up to see the tough birds. This is actually after we'd finished. We're just celebrating. I seem to have grown breasts. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it was quite tough, and we're just drinking wine because we did see 2 of the toughest birds to find. One of the tough birds, although not particularly tough, Sao Tome short-tail, also known as Bocage's longbill. It's a small, short-tailed forest floor species with this little upturned beak, very strong, very straight bill. Sorry, very straight bill, and it lives on the wet forest floor. Quite difficult to see. But the one that I think a lot of people would want to see is this, the Sao Tome biscuit. It can be tricky. There are tour reports you read where people just heard them, never got to see the bird. But we were very lucky. We had 2 birds that flew around us and showed very well indeed. It's quite similar actually to the common fiscal, but it's got yellowish underparts, it's got less white in its tail, it's got a smaller bill as well, and it often doesn't have a primary patch. It's found in undisturbed lowland and middle altitude rainforests. It's the only one of the genus that's actually found in that kind of habitat, which makes it really quite different. Most of the observations have been below 700 metres, but there have been some observations actually as high as 1,400 metres. First discovered in 1888. 13 specimens were collected during an expedition in 1928, and it was never seen again until 1990. But anyway, it's there. And I would say it's a lot less scarce, or a lot less rare than perhaps some people have thought. I think it's just a tricky bird at times. Maybe in a few years' time this bird will no longer be critically endangered. I think it may be downgraded, given the fact that it was doing quite well, and I've got a colleague who's been out there studying it, and he said there were quite a few there. This one, I'm afraid, probably won't get downgraded, and it's not looking good for it. The dwarf olive ibis. Different from the other ibises that you might know in that genus. It's got dark facial skin, and it's got a crest as well. It's confined to the primary forest below 450 metres, although it possibly could go higher. It actually has been found quite often on the border between the good forest and the cultivation. And I'm afraid this is also an area that's being used for the oil palm plantations. Not known to have ever been common. It was actually last recorded in 1928, and so it was rediscovered in 1989. I don't think anybody knows quite how many there are. It's been estimated at perhaps, the range I saw was 70 to 400 birds, so that's quite a big range, isn't it, really? But there are cases where the birds have been killed. There was a hunter who admitted to having killed 16 of them. And there are plans to develop coffee plantations and put more oil palm plantations in exactly where this bird is found. So I think the situation for this bird is probably quite grim. And here's the one we didn't see. And indeed, most people who go don't see it. And this is the Sao Tome grosbeak, critically endangered and still poorly known. Discovered again in 1888, but soon considered extinct and was rediscovered only in 1991. It was thought to be restricted to the lowland forest, but actually has been found up to 1,400 metres in secondary forest. So, it may well be that it's commoner than we thought. Suggestions in the past that there were maybe just a few of them, 50 individuals, could well be a little bit pessimistic, and maybe that will be another bird that will be downgraded to just being endangered in the future. But there are threats, because there are more people going into the forest, there are more roads being put near the forest, which means there's easier access. So I think the future for that needs to be monitored, there needs to be a plan. Can't just leave it to chance. So the future for threatened birds in the islands of Sao Tome and Principe. I think there are some real issues that need to be addressed. Oil palms occur naturally on the islands and have been used by the people there for many, many years, but not on the kind of scale we see today, which is an industrial scale. There are also real issues to do with accessibility, as I said, people going into the forest and collecting forest resources. The oil palm plantations are already there. There are companies planning to do more. The government there, we hope, will be tough in resisting any developments on the most important areas. Hunting of pigeons is rife, and as I said, ibises have been killed too. And we need to find ways to try and reduce the hunting pressure. Sites actually also need to be properly notified. I think that the staff at the Ministry of Environment know what they want to do and they know what they need to do, but as in many countries, when the Ministry of Environment goes to the government and they're then standing against the Ministry of Agriculture, who do you think wins when it's a kind of left or right decision? The decision normally goes for the money. BirdLife International, the RSPB, and SPEA, that's the Portuguese BirdLife partner, have been doing tremendous work in trying to show the government what the best actions could be and helping them to communicate that as well to people who need to be influenced. The lady on the right there is Alice Ward-Francis, who works with RSPB. She's Globally Threatened Species Officer, and she's been leading on the work and doing a fantastic job. They've got a 5-year programme to help the country implement its plans for the Obo National Park, and also to find ways of educating people to think differently about the hunting pressure. Well, you can visit Sao Tome and Principe, and you can go to the African Bird Club. You can see at least 25 endemic species. It's a week for £2,390 plus the flights, which is flying via Lisbon. Third Quest is the tour operator doing it, and those are the dates. And that is Mark Van Beers, who is not a parrot trader. He actually is a member of ABC, living in Belgium, and a fantastic birder, seen well over 8,500 species, and a great leader. He will be leading the tour for us, and it will raise, I'm sure, a minimum of £2,000 for ABC's funds. So I hope, if you haven't booked up, you'll think about it, because I think it will book up quite quickly. Most people who go to these islands have to go to Gabon as well. I mean, it's not a case of having to go to Gabon, but you can't normally just do the islands on their own. This is a rare opportunity to do the 2 islands in 1 week and see all those amazing endowments. So thank you very much indeed for listening.
Well, an excellent taster for a marvellous trip. Does anybody have any either ornithological or tourism questions for you?
Yeah, Duncan.
I'm just wondering, sitting here, how many people realise how much palm oil they actually consume every single day? And it's not just soaps and all sorts of things, it's in everything from oat cakes